Okay, so for this first problem, we're actually going to use our formula sheet, or can use our formula sheet for these for two of these three problems. So we have someone building a doghouse, and the old doghouse has a base that's 2 by 3 feet. And the plans for the new one has a base that measures 3 by 5 feet. And so I'm assuming what that means is the bottom part of the house that forms the foundation, I guess you will, of the doghouse. It was 3 by 2, and he's going to give his dog a little bit bigger condo, apparently, and he is going to make it 3 by 5. And so the question is then, how much larger is the area of the new doghouse than the old? And so we're going to assume that we're working with a rectangle. And if you don't know how to find the area of the rectangle, we know we're dealing with area because it tells us so. And so if we look on our formula sheet, it gives us the area formulas. A rectangle area is area A equals LW, which means area equals length times width, which is what we've been given, the length and the width. And so the area of the old doghouse was 6 square feet, because 2 times 3 is 6. And the area of the new doghouse is 15 square feet. So he more than doubled the size of the doghouse, the area of the flooring anyway. And so it's asking how much larger is it? And so that would be a subtraction problem to figure out the difference between them, or how much larger. And so B would be the correct answer at 9 square feet larger. Any thoughts or questions on that? Okay. 14. Carly's getting a loan for her car. So she borrows $5,000. She has simple yearly interest at 8%, which I would advise you is not a great interest rate for car. You may have to pay that, but it's not a great interest rate. She pays it off in 3 years with 36 payments, and we're wanting to know what is her monthly payment. This problem is going to require a couple steps, actually probably 3 steps to get to it. Because the first thing we need to know is how much interest is she going to have to pay? And so we need the simple interest formula. And that is on our formula sheet down here at the bottom. Simple interest, I equals PRT, which means interest equals principal times the rate times the time. And they actually give you what the variables mean. And they don't do that in a lot of the formulas, but they do for the interest formula. Principal is not a word we use very often, aside from the principal of a school maybe, but principal is the amount that you borrow. So to find the interest, you multiply the amount you borrowed times the interest rate times the time. And one of the tough things about this formula is they don't tell you what units the time is in. And so you have to know that units is in years. So anything we substitute for T has to be in years. So first thing we want to do is figure out how much interest she's going to pay on that car loan. And I know the principal is $5,000. And I'm going to multiply that times 8%. If we turn that into a decimal, we move the decimal point 2 places to the left, and 8% is equivalent to 0.08. Another way you can get that answer is if you think that 8% is 8 out of 100, and if you do 8 divided by 100, you'll also get 0.08. So we're going to multiply that times the rate and times the time. And that's where you have to distinguish between the 3 years and the 36 payments. This formula uses time in years. And so we would use 3. And so to find our interest, we end up multiplying 5,000 times 0.08 times 3. And so this $5,000 car, she's going to pay $1,200 in interest. But we need to know what's her monthly payment. So now that I know the interest, can anyone tell me how to figure out what the monthly payment would be?
Right.
I didn't quite hear what you said.
So you divide it by, like the 3 years, the months of 3 years. So add the then divide it.
Okay, we want to divide by these 36 payments to find our monthly payment, and we're going to take the total of what she borrowed plus the interest. So she has to pay back 5,000 plus 1,200 for that car. That car now cost her $6,200. She may have bought it for 5,000, but at the end of 3 years, she will have paid 6,200 for it. And then we want to divide that 6,200 equally over 36 payments. And so if I take my 1,200, I add it back to the 5,000 to get 6,200, and then I divide it by 36. And you can see that I have 172.22222. If we're rounding to the nearest penny, that's the second digit beyond to the right of the decimal. We look next door, it's another 2. And so we keep that 2. We do not round up to 3. So officially the payment would be $172.22. The interest formula is a formula you probably will see on the GED. And it's not a hard formula, but you have to pay a lot of attention to what it's asking for. Sometimes it'll ask for the interest. Sometimes it'll ask for how much total do you pay back. So you have to add the interest to what they borrowed. Or sometimes you might be calculating the rate instead of calculating the interest. They'll tell you the interest and the principal and the time, but you have to calculate the percentage rate. And so it's not a hard formula, but people get tripped up by not answering the question that's asked a lot of times. So that's something to be wary about with this one. Okay, on number 15, this is a practical problem for us. When we're filling up our vehicles, and I don't know about Flagstaff, but in Page, the gas prices can vary incredibly from station to station, depending on where they think they can get the tourists to pay the most money. So she needs 13 gallons of gas, and one gas station is $2.49. Another gas station is $2.62. And it's saying if she buys the cheaper gas, how much will she save compared to the other station? And so this is a nice practical problem. If we want to know how much she's going to pay for the gas, she's going to buy 13 gallons at $2.49 a gallon. And so that's a simple multiplication problem. And so if I take 13 gallons times $2.49, that gas is going to cost her $32.37. If she were to buy the gas at $2.62, and as I'm looking at these problems, I'm wishing gas was priced in the $2 range rather than where we are right now. If she pays $2.62, she's going to pay $334.06. And so this question is asking how much will she have saved? So just like the first problem, we're looking at what's the difference between these two numbers. And to get that, we would take the 3406 and we would subtract off the 3237 to figure out what's amount is between those, and it is $1.69. So she'd save $1.69. She could probably go buy what, a small drink at McDonald's with her savings, maybe. Thanks, Zacius. Good job. So any questions on these? Again, the purpose of these starting activities is just to give people something to do while we're gathering, and also to just touch on other math topics that we're not currently studying to keep our math skills current. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Difference by icing the $2.49 by the $2.52. I got a 13-cent difference.
Okay.
That's kind of 13.
Very
Yes.
nice. That would be another way to do the problem. So he's saying that we could take $2.62 minus $2.49, and that's a 13-cent difference. And then if you if you have that difference is for 1 gallon, then you can take that 13 cents and multiply it by the 13 gallons you're going to buy, and you'll come up with the exact same answer of $1.69. Thank you for that. Another way to do it. The nice thing about math is a lot of times there are multiple ways to attack a problem. Any other thoughts or questions, comments? All right. So we are continuing on in this packet we've been working on. The front page had lesson 6 on it. The front page of this packet looks like this. We are on page 8 of it, and it's expressions and calculator skills. I'm going to grab the link just in case there's anyone who needs it.
I guess she has a big okay. I think I have one more. If not, I'll print them off. Okay, thanks. Okay.
All right. So I've got the link in the chat if you need it and you're not in the Flagstaff classroom. But basically what we're going to do is going to pull together again some of the things we've been doing, but making sure that we are confident in being able to use the calculator. And I want to grab another link here, because I shared with you how to find an online version of the calculator that you can use. Where is my link? Okay, here it is. Okay, if you don't have a calculator that's like the one I have, like this one, the TI-30XS, if you will click on the link that I put in the chat, and when you do that, you'll go to this screen. Hey, Curtis. And what this is just a shell of a test that has the calculator in it. And so when you get to this screen, you press start. And then you press start again. And that takes you into this basically fake test. And if you look in the upper toolbar, there is a calculator icon. And if you click that, you will get the calculator that's the exact same one as what I have. And that you can use on the test. And it's really important that you have the same calculator that you can use on the test. Let's see if I can. Okay, so I've got, darn it. I can be able to do that. So if you don't have this yellow calculator, if you're in Flagstaff, I imagine Daniel has enough for all of you to use. If you're online and you don't have this calculator, if you'll follow that link and get this calculator, you can have the calculator just like everyone else is using. And today is about calculator skills. And so that's why I'd like for everybody to have access to the calculator that you're going to be using. Any questions about navigating to that calculator and getting it open before I move on? All right, so we've been working with algebraic expressions. And if you remember, an algebraic expression is something like 3x or x squared or 5 m to the third power. Those are all expressions. And we talked about we could simplify and combine those combine like terms, but that we can't do anything more until we actually know a value. And so once we know a value for x, we can calculate what 3x means, because 3x means 3 times x. And so if I tell you that x is 4, then 3x is the same as 3 times 4, or 12. Or if I tell you x is 4 and you have x squared, now you have 4 squared, which means 4 times 4, or you have 16. And so what we're going to be doing is just making sure we understand how to put those kinds of expressions into the calculator. Because if you recall, the first section of the test has 5 questions that you cannot use the calculator on.
Volume went down.
What's that?
Volume went down. Volume,
Value?
your volume. Hold on. Your volume. Oh, the volume went down.
The value went down?
For volume.
Oh, my volume went down. I'm sorry. Let me check and see if what happened to my audio here. Daniel, why isn't it letting me see which speaker I'm using?
It's working now.
It's working. Okay. All right. So we're going to be basically taking algebraic expressions and we're going to be substituting in values and practicing with the calculator to make sure we can do that. Because as I was saying, the first part of the test, you cannot use the calculator. That's only 5 questions. The last part of the test, you can use the calculator, and that's 41 questions. And so the calculator, in most cases, you will be able to calculate faster than you can by hand. And more than likely, probably more accurately as well. And so we really want you to, I know I have students who kind of want to be old school and, just, I can do it by hand, so I want to do it by hand. But part of the GED test is also about being efficient with your time. And so we want to get you all the tools you can to be efficient with your time so that you can be as successful as possible. And so we're going to be practicing with your calculator. And so this first series of buttons is just to verify that you have a scientific calculator that uses the order of operations. And if you've got this calculator or the one online, you should, but we'll still do this anyway. And so it says to put in 4 times 3 and hit the x squared button. And so if you'll put that in your calculator and hit enter, it says if the display reads 36, which it should, that means your calculator uses algebraic logic, which means it's using the correct order of operations. If you use particularly an older calculator, not all of those use the order of operations. And so if your calculator is an old calculator, and it would give you the number 144 because it's not using the order of operations. It's trusting you to enter the order of operations. Everyone should have a calculator that uses the order of operations. If you're using one of these yellow calculators, you're fine. If you're using the online calculator I just gave you the link for and showed you how to get to, you'll be fine as well. If you're trying to use your phone, like if I take my phone here, and actually if you turn the iPhone to the side, you get a scientific calculator. If I put in 4 times 3 squared. Okay, the iPhone actually does use algebraic logic as well. I'm a bit surprised. But again, your best bet is to be using the calculator that you're going to be using. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking expressions like this one, and we are going to be evaluating them, meaning we are going to be given the value that the variable equals, and we're going to be putting in that value everywhere we see that variable, in this case, that x. And we want to get to the point where we can enter these all in one long line. The reason being, again, efficiency. If we can type it all in at once, hit the enter, bam, we have an answer, we're done. Okay. And so it shows you the key sequences that you would use in order to put in into the calculator this expression when x equals -4. And it's a little bit, you got to get used to how they write it. So they're saying to do 2 and hit the multiplication key. And then the next key is we're going to hit the parentheses key. And that's interesting. I think just give me just a moment, because I don't think the way they have it here is actually going to get you the right answer, which is not a good thing.
Oh, they're not putting it in parentheses. They're showing the demo on the actual.
I know. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing, Daniel. They should have the parentheses and they didn't put it in there. Well, that's really crummy. We need to put parentheses around this -4 in order to get a right answer. So let's start this. Let's start this again. We want to put 2 times, and then we want to put the open parentheses, which is above the 8. And then we put in -4. And then we close the parentheses. And we're going to square it. And then we're going to add 3 multiplication -4 minus 5. Now keep in mind the negative sign is down here to the right of the decimal point, and the subtract is up here with the other operators. And so you have to use the negative when you want a -4, and you have to use subtraction when you're wanting subtraction. And then if we hit enter, you should
-49.
you should get 15. Okay, so if you didn't get 15, let's do it. We'll do it again. And so we're going to take 2 multiplication, open parentheses, -4, close the parentheses, hit the x squared key, which is to the left of the 7, plus 3 times -4 minus 5. Now, another nice thing about this calculator is you can go back and see everything you punched in before you hit enter, and you can actually correct things. You can use this toggle key to go back in and correct an error.
Without the parentheses, it's -49.
Right. And I'll explain why you're getting a different answer in just a minute, okay?
Okay.
Everybody can get 15, and then we'll talk about the specifics. So if you're satisfied you have everything that looks just like mine, then you can press enter and you should get 15. Kenyatta, can you turn off your mic? Because I think that's why we get that feedback. Thank you.
That's where we gave the.
You do that and do the feedback there.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start out first with why do we, this is an error in this book that we've just discovered that I took this from. Why does it make a difference when we have parentheses around the -4 or not parentheses around the -4? And we've touched on this just a little bit. But let's talk about it again, because it is a really important concept that you are very likely to see. While these look the same, and the only difference between the first line and the second line is I have parentheses around the second one. This bottom one with the parentheses says, take the quantity -4 and square it. So that means -4 times -4, which is +16, because a negative times a negative, when the signs are the same, the answer is positive. The first one says, take 4 and square it, and then the answer is negative. And so that means this is -4 times 4. The signs are different, so the answer is negative. And so, Robert, your observation is absolutely correct, and this is the mistake the book made. They didn't put the parentheses around the -4. And so when the calculator calculated this -4 squared, if you don't put the parentheses in, it calculates that value as -16. If you do have the parentheses around it, it calculates it correctly at +16, which then of course throws off the rest of your calculation if you have a -16 instead of a positive. That makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, so now if we look back up here at the original expression, what we need to be able to get to is that you can look at this expression and you can look at this value and you can figure out what to plug in the calculator and what order to plug it into without having all these keystrokes listed for you. And so if I were to look at this, I look here and I go, okay, this says to take 2 times x squared. So I'm going to take 2 times, I now know that x squared is -4. And I'm going to put it in parentheses. And you don't have to put them in parentheses if this 4 were positive. But if you want to always put the number you're squaring in parentheses, then you'll always get the right number. Okay, so I did 2x squared. I put in my -4. Then I'm going to add 3 times x, which again, I know is -4. And then the last thing I'm going to do is subtract 5. So what the lesson is about today is, can we get a facility with the calculator so that we can look at the expression, we can be given the value for x, and we can successfully translate that into the calculator to get an answer. And at the beginning, you may be frustrated and say, you know what, it's just easier to do it by hand. And that may be true at the beginning, but as you learn how to use the calculator, you'll get faster with it. And I promise you, you will eventually be more efficient at the calculator than you are by hand. So that's kind of the goal for where we're headed today. And so if we look, there's a lot of dense text here, but basically here's our next.
Hold on, we had a question.
Oh yeah, great.
I was just wondering, how do you go back and correct, like for instance, like the -4, if I mistakenly put a -4, how do I go back?
Yep. Okay. Let me just type it again. Once you've entered it, you can't go back and fix it. So let me type in again. That's okay. I'll just type it in again and I'll make a mistake. You're saying instead of the -4, you put a -4.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just keep typing. And I'm going to go, oh, crumb. I put a minus instead of a negative. Oh, I don't know what it's called, little toggle thing. I just push it to the left and you can see my cursor moving. I get to the place that I want to fix and I just type over with a negative. And then I go back out and I press enter. Okay. Another thing you can do is, let's say I type this in and I forget my parentheses. And I go, oh, darn, I know I was supposed to put parentheses. So I can come back here. And I'm going to, above the delete key, this key says delete. Above it, it says insert. So I could delete something if I wanted to. I could delete that negative. And then since insert is in green above the delete, I push the green second key and then the delete, and it will allow me to put it back in. Okay. Now I've realized I didn't put parentheses. So I've got my cursor right over where I want my parenthesis, and I push the green second and insert a parenthesis. And you can see it put the parenthesis right there. And now I want to insert another one. And I have successfully put in parentheses after I forgot them. The other thing I like about this calculator is, in an old-fashioned calculator, you couldn't see what you had entered. Every time you entered a new number, what you'd entered previously disappeared. With this calculator, you can see everything that you entered so that you can double check to see if it's what you really wanted. Good question. Anyone else have a question? All right, so for example 2, we have 2 times x plus 4. Sorry, my internet must be slow today. Every time I move my hand. 2 times x plus 4 plus 5x over 3 when x is 6. Okay, so that means this 6 is going to go in for every single x. So you can start by, if you'll start by just following the directions, darn it. I apologize for my finger messing up the thing. Follow the directions and see if you can get the answer of 30. So just try it on your own, see if you can get the answer of 30, and then we'll kind of break down why we do it that way. Okay, do we have anyone who's struggling just to follow the keystrokes and get 30? I know that requires you to take a risk and say you can't get it, but let me know if you're having any trouble. Okay, so again, we need to be able to get to where we know how to enter the keystrokes without having it listed for us. And one thing that will probably help is to actually rewrite the expression putting in the value. For example, I'm going to rewrite this as 2 times 6 plus 4 plus 5 times 6 over 3. So what I did is I replaced this x with 6, and I replaced this x with 6. If you write it out like this, it'll probably be easier to see that how you want to put it in the calculator. Because this says 2 times the quantity. So I put in the parentheses that are right there, 6 plus 4, close the parentheses, plus, now they suggested doing 5 times 6 divided by 3. And I would actually suggest you do it a different way. And the reason is, if this was 5 plus 6 over 3, you couldn't put it in as 5 plus 6 over 3, or you wouldn't get the right answer. But I think a better way to enter that, and let me delete this part, is we're going to make this look just like it does here by making a fraction. And if you look at the fraction key, 3 keys above the 7 says N over D, which stands for numerator over denominator. And if you press that key, it creates a fraction template for you. And then you can put 5 times 6 on the top of the fraction. You use this gray toggle key to toggle down and put 3 on the bottom. And you can make then what's on the calculator look exactly like what's on your, what you wrote out by hand. And you still get the same answer. So I personally believe this is a better way to put it in than what this page says. Because if that 5 times 6 was 5 plus 6, this would be the only way, well, the only way without using more parentheses that you could enter it and get the correct answer. So take a minute and enter it like I have it. that a little larger. See if you can make your computer screen, your calculator screen look just like mine. And if you're struggling with any of the keys, let me know. Remember the fraction key is 3 keys above the 7. Okay. I'm going to convert you to the calculator now.
Yeah, when I was in school, they used something. I mean, all these days, it's awesome.
All right. We having success with that, or anyone have a question? We good in flag?
Can we review it one more time, please?
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to look, I'm keeping in mind, this is what I'm typing. I want it to look like this. Okay, so that says to take 2 times the quantity 6 plus 4. So I'm going to do 2 times. I need parentheses because there's parentheses right here. So I do open parentheses above the 8. 6 plus 4. That's what's in the parentheses. I have to close the parentheses, and the closed parentheses is right above the 9. And then I'm going to add this fraction. And so you hit the addition sign, and then you need a fraction template. And so 3 keys above the 7, there's the fraction. And when you push that key, it just makes a template that you can then fill in. And so the blinking cursor is on the top of the fraction. It will always start on the top. And on the top of my fraction, I have 5 times 6. Whoops, I put 5 times 66. So I'm going to toggle left and delete that extra 6. And then I toggle down. And there's a 3 on the bottom of the fraction. I don't know if you actually have to toggle out of the fraction or not to get the right answer. I usually toggle out of the fraction and get the blinking cursor to the right of it, but I'm just going to try this. I'm going to press enter and see if, and it does, it works. So you don't actually have to toggle out of the fraction, it looks like. Okay, how we doing? Thumbs up and flag.
We have a calculator that someone changed the mode on, so it won't give the fraction template. So I'm trying to see if I can change it.
Okay, that's interesting.
Play with the settings of one of the calculators.
Okay. Do you have just another calculator they can use?
That's what I'm grabbing, and let me just run a quick.
Okay. The other thing is you can use that link to get to the online one if you guys are short calculators that are behaving. That'd be another option.
I got this one reset.
Okay. How'd you reset it? Just Daniel, so I'll know.
Oh, next to the second key is mode.
Yeah.
And you want to change from classic to math print.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that. All right. James, if you
I just learned it.
well, thank you for being a fast learner. James, if you can sign in, let me get the sign in sheet to you. And we're back in this packet that we've been in. We're on page 8. And we're working with the calculator. Okay, so now we have a third example. Okay, so here's our expression. Okay, and X is 4. I'm going to back out of this Zoom just a little bit because I'm going to come over here and on the left, I'm going to write out the expression after I've substituted in the 4. So first, I'm just going to rewrite it. 3x plus 6 divided by 2 plus the square root of 225. Okay. So my first step is I need to put a 4 in for that x. So I'm just going to rewrite this as 3 times 4 plus 6 divided by 2 plus the square root of 225. And we're going to do this a couple different ways. We're going to do it in pieces and as a whole thing, and then in pieces. So I can show you another feature of this calculator. Get the best light on it here. Okay, so we're starting with a fraction. Okay, so we need our fraction template. And remember, our fraction template is 3 keys above the 7. And I put 3 parentheses 4. We know that means 3 times 4. And actually, you can enter it as 3 times 4, or you can enter it as 3 parentheses 4, and it will know to multiply. So on the top of that fraction, you can either put 3 parentheses 4 plus 6, or you can put 3 times 4 plus 6. And then we need to toggle down to the bottom of the fraction. And we put a 2. Now, this is important that we do need to toggle out of the fraction before we put in this square root of 225, because if you hit plus next, it's going to keep you on the bottom of the fraction. And that square root of 225 is not on the bottom of the fraction. So if you accidentally pressed plus while you were still on the bottom of the fraction, use that toggle key to the left to go back where you're on top of that blinking addition sign and push delete, which is right up here on the top, and it'll take it away. And then you hit that right toggle button and it'll jump out of the fraction template. And that's where we want to be before we start adding the next quantity. Now, the symbol that's above the 225, we've touched on this off and on over several classes. That symbol is the square root of 225. And if you look down on your calculator and you look to the left of the 7 is that x squared key. That's when we want to square something. And if you look right above that key in green, there's a tiny little square root symbol. And if we want it to create this square root symbol for us, if it's in green, it means we push the green key and then this key, and it will create that square root template on the screen for us. And then we type in our 225. And we can double check our work. We can make sure that what I hand wrote matches what my calculator looks like. I can fix anything that I've messed up on and hit enter. Okay. Anyone who needs me to go through that again? Are we good? Speak up. It's no big deal if we need to go through it again. I'd rather you get this than have me fly by and you're not seeing what to do.
Yeah, I got a situation. With the problem in this case, I didn't use the parentheses around the 4, but I still got the same answer as you.
But did you put 3 times? You used the times, the X for times?
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yes, because this parenthesis means times, this calculator is so smart, it knows that.
Okay.
And so, yes, you can do 3 times 4 plus 6 over 2, toggle out, plus the square root of 225 and get the same answer.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay. And so if it helps you.
Yeah, the way you do it helps me too. I just forgot to do it.
Right, but I'm saying if you had written this out when you wrote it out by hand, maybe you wrote it like 3 times 4 with a dot, then it might make more sense to you to use the multiplication symbol. If you wrote it this way, you can see it exactly that way on the screen, but this calculator interprets things in parentheses and a number in front of it as multiplication, which is really nice. It's a smart calculator. It's a good tool and a good asset. Now, one thing they're trying to illustrate with this example 3 is we could actually do this problem in 2 pieces if we wanted to. So let's try it that way. If we do it in 2 pieces, we would be doing calculating what this equals and then finding an answer and then adding the square root of 225. So let's take a look and see how we would do that. We're going to start exactly the same way. We need a fraction template. And we're going to have 3 times 4. And you can do that as 3 parentheses and 3 and then 4 in parentheses, or you can do 3x4 plus 6 over 2. Okay, we're doing exactly what we did before. We're only just going to calculate what's in this blue box. And if I press enter, you should get 9. And then maybe you're like, oh crap, I forgot to add the square root of 225. You do not have to put in all of this again. If you have your answer of 9 and you just hit the plus key, it's going to take the previous answer plus whatever you type in. So that's going to take the 9 from the previous answer, that was our fraction, and we're going to add the square root of 225 to it, and I'm going to get the same answer of 24. And so a lot of you, I've seen a lot of students work with calculators, and this is what a lot of you tend to do. You tend to calculate something 3 times 56, and you get an answer of 168, and then you clear the calculator and you do 168 minus, 45. Hey, don't do that. Don't keep clearing the screen, because if I need this 123 and I'm going to multiply that by 2, I don't have to type in 123 again. I just get the answer, and then whatever's there, if I just start operating, if I push the subtraction key, it's going to say that previous answer subtracted by whatever I type in. Okay. So as my husband always says, work smarter, not harder. Let the calculator do the work for you. If you're starting a brand new problem, your screen is very cluttered, go ahead and push clear if you want to, that's fine. But during the midst of a problem, don't keep clearing that screen, because all you're doing is potentially introducing error when you type the previous answer in wrong. Then you're just complicating errors where it will keep that number for you and use it. Okay, so those are some tricks of the trade for calculator use. So what we're going to do, well, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to do some practice with this calculator on some various problems. But right now it's about 5 after, so let's break till 11:15. Give your brain a rest for a few minutes. Gather any materials you need, and we'll start up in 10 minutes. It's 11:15. And so let's take a look. One thing I don't like about this resource is it's so crammed together. There's very little room to work. So you may need another piece of paper to be able to do some of these problems. So basically we're going to practice using the calculator to get the answers to these problems. And if you recall, we've practiced a lot with how to get them by hand. And to be honest with you, if you need more practice on order of operations, a good activity for you would be we're going to do these problems today with the calculator, but then you could take this paper home and rewrite the problems and try to calculate by hand, and you'll have the answers to know if you can still get the answers by hand. So it's important that we know how to do order of operations without the calculator, but it's also important that we can be efficient with the calculator. So what I would recommend for these is that you take the time to go ahead and rewrite this expression, putting in the value for X. So right below this, I'm going to write 5 times 2 squared minus 3 times X, which is still 2, plus 5. So all I've done is rewritten the expression, and I've taken out the X's and I've put in the 2. And the reason I can do that is because X is equal to 2. And so once I've written that out.
I got a question.
Yeah.
How do you know when to put the parentheses in?
Okay, you could have written this as 5 and then a dot 2. I put the parentheses to indicate to myself that this has to be multiplication. Okay, the fact that it's being squared is always a good idea to put parentheses, because if this 2 were negative, it would have to have parentheses. Since it's positive, it doesn't require them, but you won't get the wrong answer if you put them in when it's not necessary. Okay, so if you had wanted to write this as 5 dot representing multiplication, 2 squared minus 3 dot 2 plus 5, you could do that. I prefer the parentheses to show multiplication, and this is why. This first dot here looks like a dot. This second dot here kind of looks like a subtractor and negative. And so I find the parentheses, I make fewer mistakes using parentheses. If I'm going to have 2 numbers that are multiplied, I put the second one in parentheses, and that helps me keep better track. Does that help? Okay, so now basically I want to make the calculator look exactly like what I wrote out. And so I'm going to say 5, open parentheses above the 8, 2, close parentheses above the 9, and then I want to square that 2, and the squared key is just to the left of the 7, minus, this is 3 times 2, and you could put 3x2, 3 times 2 if you wanted to, or you can put in 3 parentheses 2 plus 5. And so again, I can go back and proofread to see that I have everything that I've written down that looks the same before I press the enter key. And so that answer is 19. Okay, now let's take just a moment here. If we were going to do this problem by hand, remember our order of operations, our PEMDAS, or our please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or our penguins eating Mexican Doritos and salsa would say that I have parentheses, but there's nothing to do inside of them. There's just numbers. So I move to exponents. And 2 squared is 4. So all I did was evaluate the exponent to get 4. Next, I do multiplication and division left to right. And I have multiplication in 2 different places. And so that would be 20 minus 6 plus 5. 5 times 4 is 20. 3 times 2 is 6. And then I do my addition and subtraction left to right. 20 minus 6 is 14. And 14 plus 5 is 19. Okay, so our focus today is really using the calculator and getting comfortable with it. But this is a great thing you could take and redo then by hand to see if you get the same answers as the calculator. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let's take some time and how about we have you work on like 2 through 6. Work on those problems with the calculator. If you want to double check yourself by hand, you can, but let's have you complete what you can with the calculator on 2 through 6 before you go back and do them by hand. If you have some extra time, you can try them by hand. And we'll talk about them and see how you're doing and then see what else we need to do to keep progressing. So we'll take about maybe 10 minutes to work those 5 problems, and then we'll come back together and chat about it. Either put times or put numbers. That'll work. Because you are multiplying them.
Can I help you? Insert key. You have to press the square. And let's see, you just press that insert key. It will switch to top. And then you just use your right arrow, go back to the right word.
Okay. Hey, Daniel, I got a question.
Yep. Yep. No problem. Yeah, it's a weird one when you're not used to it.
Yeah.
It's overcoming that instinct of all those years of someone yelling at you in
Yeah.
elementary school. You won't carry a calculator with you all the time.
Yeah, back in elementary school, they really like
Yep,
emphasize no calculator use now, like these calculators.
yes. So it's overcoming that instinct of you being a small child and getting yelled at,
Right?
because it scars you.
I feel like elementary and middle school is a lot different for like my siblings than it is when I was in middle school.
Yeah,
The things they teach in math.
To enter it, it locks it in.
I guess it'd help if I had my mic on. How we doing in Flagstaff? We need more time? About done?
Yeah, I'm done. 6, I gotta keep it for 6.
Okay. Others? Daniel, is your sense that you guys are pretty well done there?
So we have a little bit of trouble on 6.
Okay,
One who's gone ahead to 11, but is having a little bit of trouble there.
okay. Well, let's start it. How about we start back at 2 and we'll get to 6? Okay. Let's take some answers. What do you think for number 2? I haven't done these, so I don't know what the answer is, but let me know what you got and let's see how that compares once we do it again.
Square root 17.
Square root of 17. Okay, any other answers? You can send it in the chat. Anyone brave enough to share their answer?
Here's 10.
What's that?
Yeah, so we don't need the full string, so 6.7.
6.7. I see an answer of 19 in the chat. All right, so let's tackle this one. If you're not taking the time to write out the expression with the value included, I would highly encourage you to do that. Or I could write it as 7.5 or 7 parentheses 5 plus 2 times 5. If you recall, when we were doing this by hand, several times I made errors just in where I substituted the numbers. And so I think you'll have a lot more success with the calculator if you go ahead and write out what you're going to put in the calculator. So I need a square root template. And remember, that's above the x squared to the left of the 7. So I push the green button and the x squared to get my template. I either put in 7 times 5, or I can put 7 and then 5 in parentheses. It does not matter. Before you push the plus sign, you have to get out of this square root template. So you need to push the right key. And do you see how suddenly the square root symbol shortens to just over the 5? And now we want to do plus 2 times 5. Again, I can do 2 times 5, or I can do 2 and then 5 in parentheses. Double check that it looks like what I have, what I've wrote out. And that's not a very satisfying answer. The square root of 35 plus 10. Let's say you want that to be in decimal. If you look down at the bottom of the calculator and you see this double arrow, anytime you get an answer like in a fraction form you don't want, or something that you don't like the looks of, push this double arrow key and see what other answers it will give you. And I am getting the answer 15.9. And so I don't agree with any of you. So did I do something wrong? That's 35. If I just think about this by hand, it's the square root of 35 plus 10. And the square root of 35 plus 10 is 15.9. So if you didn't get that answer, you probably, of course, have done other problems, so it's missing. But let me put this in again. Why don't you try inputting it again if you didn't get that answer, to see if you can find where you may have made a mistake. It's going to be hard for me to figure out what you did incorrectly.
For the answer, I got 1.2.
You got 1.2?
Did that, but the first one right there, Jack.
Okay.
Square root of 10. Okay, that would do it.
Here.
If you want to make. And also check it by knowing your squares. So 6 squared is 36. You know it's going to be something very close to 6 as your square root. Okay. Got that first part to get the full thing. Enter. We change that into decimal. Yes, you got it.
All right, I want to save just a few, give you just a few moments to see if everyone will start and input what I've written and see if you can get to the answer 15.9. And if you are not writing out this piece here that I wrote out in green, I would highly recommend you do that because you're going to have a lot fewer mistakes if you take the time to do this. So I'm going to give a couple minutes. Curtis, you want to plug that in and make sure did you get the
Yeah.
right answer?
First time I got that there.
So you're,
How the square root goes over the 2 plus 5. Okay, here, the square root ends. The plus 2 times x is not the square root. Okay. So that's why you've got to do square root 3 times 5. And you've got to get out of the square root. You know, we shortened it plus.
that mean you're not still working under your square root.
I don't want that square root to extend over. You know, no. Oh, I did 3 times 5, not 7 times 5. Okay, 7 times 5. Get out of the square root plus 2 times. Okay. Use yours or mine?
I got 225
You got 220,
or 255.
255.
Yeah, I just did the 49 times 5.
Where are you getting 49 times 5?
The
You
square root is 7.
you squared 7. You didn't take the square root of it, you squared it.
Oh, squared it.
Yep, you did 7 squared times 5 plus 2 times 5. And that's how you get 255. But if you look at what I just typed here and compare it with this, I have a square root symbol and you have an exponent.
Yeah, the square root symbol, the square root of 7 is still 49, right?
No, the square root of 7 is 2.645751311. Way smaller than 49. So it makes a difference whether you use the square or the square root.
Okay.
Okay, so try it again. Another thing I saw is, or it could be an issue, is if you don't get out of the square root symbol, if you just keep going and put plus 2 times 5, do you see how this square root symbol extends over the 2 times 5?
Yeah, you got to get out of the square root symbol. by using the-
So that may be another common mistake that
Okay.
people may have made. If you got 6.7, somebody offered the answer 6.7. If you got 6.7, what you did was you didn't get out of the square root. And you've got this square root symbol going all the way over the entire problem. And in the problem itself, the square root only goes over the 7 times 5. So that's how you could have gotten 6.7. Okay, so let me clear these because I want to, again, show you what it looks like correctly. 7 times 5. Use the right toggle key to get out of that square root plus 2 times 5.
I got a square root of 35 plus 10.
Exactly.
And
And-
then I got 15.91.
Right, then you use your double arrow key and you'll get that 15.91.
All right. Thank you.
And actually, for number 2, I forgot to read the whole problem. It says round it to the nearest 10th.
So 16.
Nope, nearest 10th. 10ths place is 1 past the decimal. 10ths, hundredths, thousandths. So the 9 is in the 10ths place. We look next door is a 1. And since that's smaller than 5, this 9 stays a 9. And so the answer we would be looking for number 2 is 15.9.
So it stays,
It stays, yep. So 19 was our first answer and 15.9 should be our second answer. Okay. Okay, so number 3, what kind of values did we get for number 3?
-9.
Okay, we've got an answer of -9 for number 3. Do I have any other answers you'd like to share? Okay, we got an answer of 51 in the chat. Any others? All right, so again, let's take that -3 and let's write this out so that we know exactly what it should look like in the calculator. We have 7 times -3 squared. Since this number is negative and we're squaring it, it's absolutely positively imperative you get the parentheses around the -3 in the calculator. And a good policy is if I'm going to take anything to an exponent, just put the parentheses. You don't always need them, but it's not wrong to have them. And so the best policy is just always use them. Then we're going to take 2 times -3, and then we're going to subtract 6. And so if you take the time to write this out, then you can make your calculator screen match what this says. So I'm going to type in 7 parentheses -3. And remember, I do need to use the negative and not the subtract key for that in front of that 3. I'm going to push the squared key to square it. I'm going to add 2 times -3. And then I'm going to subtract 6. And if you look at the screen, do you see how the negative sign is smaller and it's raised up versus the subtraction? So you can actually recognize by looking whether you push subtract. It's a longer line and it's set right in the middle, and the negative is shorter and it's set up a little higher. So I would agree with the answer. Unless you see something I've done wrong, I would agree with the answer of 51 for number 3.
That's what I got right now. And without the parentheses, it's -75.
Right. And we can't have different answers. So anytime you're squaring a negative number, you have to have the parentheses. Okay. So best policy, just always put them. All right, number 4. What are some values we have for number 4? Okay, we've got a value of 16.5 through the chat. All right, I got another 16.5 votes here in Page.
Yeah, 3/2.
33/2.
Yeah, that's what I got.
All right, so we've got 2 votes for 33/2. All right, so let's take a moment here. I'm going to take 1/2. Since the x is right near the 1/2, I am multiplying 1/2 by 3, and then I'm going to add 15. Okay, so in the calculator, I'm going to get a template for a fraction. I'm going to put in 1 on top, toggle down 2 on bottom, and I need to get out of that fraction. So I right toggle to get out of the fraction. I'm going to multiply it by 3. Again, I can use parentheses or I can use the multiplication key, either one. and then I'm gonna add 15. And the calculator says 33/2, but I want to show you something. If I hit that double arrow key, it is also 16.5. 33/2 and 16.5 are equivalent. Both answers are correct. And so either one would be a correct answer. The only thing you have to remember is obviously that on the GED, if it's multiple choice, there will only be one of those answers listed. And so that knowing about this double arrow key is that that's your friend. Anytime you get an answer that doesn't look like the form you want it to be in, click that double arrow key and it'll go back and forth between the fraction and the decimal. Now, the other form this answer could be in would be 16 1/2 as a fraction. And I want to show you how to get that with the calculator. If you look above if you look at the 8 key, and then you go 3 keys above the 8 key, make this bigger. 3 keys above the 8 key is this, it says X 10 to the N, but you look above that in green, it says N/D fraction, double arrow, U N/D. So that means it'll go back and forth between a fraction and a mixed number, meaning a fraction like 33/2, or a mixed number, meaning like 16 1/2. And so if I take my 33/2 and I push the second key and then that key that's under the green thing I want and enter, it will turn 33/2 into a mixed number with the fraction instead of the decimal. And then if I push the double arrow key, it'll change it from this fraction back to the decimal. Okay, so the double arrow key is a good key to just get a different form of an answer. And then the key that is 3 above the 8 that has the double arrow. If you look next door to the key that's 3 above the 9, it says F double arrow D, and that goes from fraction to decimal. But that also, your double arrow key down here does the same thing. So I usually use this double arrow key. Okay, so good job. We had several of you who got the right answer in different forms, but that's great. All right, let's see about number 5. See if we can get through 5 and 6 before our time is up here. Okay, extra challenge on 5 is now I have 2 values. Absolutely, positively, please write it out. I have 3 times 2 times -2 plus 3 plus y, which is 9, close parentheses, minus 14.
Times.
Okay. So you can see I have an extra set of parentheses because I put 2 times -2 in parentheses. You could put 2 dots -2, but I get concerned about dots and negatives, so I use parentheses. Okay. What are some answers we got for number 5? What'd you get, Curtis? Okay, Curtis says he got 24. Anyone else want to volunteer an answer for this one? Okay, I see 10 and I see -18. So we got some discrepancies on answers here. And this one is a little more challenging. Okay, but if I can get it written out, now I want to make what I have here look just the same on the calculator. I'm starting a new problem. I don't want any of those 16.5 mess. I am going to clear. I need to do 3, open parentheses above the 8, 2, open parentheses above the 8, -2, close the parentheses, above the 9 plus 3 plus 9, close the parentheses, minus 14. And look at that. I did minus 11. My fingers had a little stutter and I got 2 ones instead of just 1. I'm going to toggle to the left. So I'm blinking over that 1 and I'm going to type a 4 to fix it. So I can double check to make sure everything looks just like it does on my handwriting. And I agree with 10 on that one. Now, if you didn't get 10, unfortunately, like I said, you've done other problems and you've wiped out what you put in the calculator. If you didn't get 10, the first question I would ask you is, did you write out all of this? Because it's really easy to reverse X's and Y's. The other common mistake that might be made on this problem would be where to put this second parentheses, that it goes after the Y or after the 9. So I think your accuracy will go up if you'll take the time to write this out. And so let me find a place to put the number 10. So 10 is the correct answer for this one. Okay. Questions on this one? Okay, it looks like a few of you got that 10. All right, we are just like 1 minute before noon. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold here. I know some of you said you had trouble with number 6, and we will come back. I want to take time and do number 6 right and give you plenty of time to see how to do it, and rather than rush it in the last minute of class. So we will pick up with number 6 on Thursday. And we'll keep working on this. If you're finding that this is still a challenge, we've got plenty of time to get this squared away. So I hope you have an amazing day, and let me know if there's any questions.
Yeah, I have one question.
Sure.
How do you do powers on the calculator? Is there a button for it?
Yes. So like to the 3rd power.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember, that is this caret key. We call this the caret key, this little up arrow.
Oh, yeah.
It's the arrowhead. So if I
Oh,
want
okay.
4 to the 3rd power, I would do 4 caret key, and then it makes the template for the exponent. And then you put the 3 in and then evaluate.
Oh, nice. All right. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And you can actually do the squares that way too. It's just they since we do squares so much more often, it has its own key also. But
Okay.
actually 4 caret keys 2 and get 4 squared. So
Thank you, Mary.
you're welcome. Hope you guys have a great day. We'll see you Thursday. We'll keep at it. And you will master this calculator.
Thank you very much for today, and we will see you again on Thursday.
Thanks for your help, Daniel.
Have a good one.
You too. Melissa, are you still here?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, did you get, were you messaging with Daniel too to get a date picked out?
Yes, he actually gave me a date for the next week on Monday at 12.
Awesome. And I really think you really ought to look at, once we get done with that, we need to start having you take GED ready tests. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think your scores, even from your last progress test, said you're there. So I would just go into the progress test, do the best you can. We'll see what your scores look like, and then probably next step is take some GED ready tests and then get you down the road.
Thank you so much.
All right, so let's make sure you get in for that one because you got a lot of hours. You've got like almost 100 hours of class time, and we were supposed to progress test you at 40. So
Yeah.
yeah, so you're gonna do awesome, and
Thank you.
you know, so I think we're just gonna see more growth, which means you're gonna be that much more ready to take the GED.
Thank you so much. And you really have been helping me out with everything, like with math, because I really do struggle with math, and you guys have been really helping me out with everything and teaching me a lot. So I appreciate
Glad
it.
to hear that. So we'll take a look at your progress test results, and I think we'll see some good things happening.
Thank you.
All right, have a good day.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.